County's planner, the land use chapter of our growth policy.
Thank you, Mayor, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. I'm Chief Rock. I'm the long range planner with the City of Whitefish, project manager, Vision Whitefish 2045. I'm going to do just a brief update here before we introduce you to the consultants to kind of talk about where we were and where we're at this point. I was talking about the review process, but I'm not going to go far on this. I think kind of we've talked about it. There's a bunch of research that goes into writing each of these drafts. Once the drafts are done, we send them out for interdepartment review. Then we send them to whoever the experts are that are in this topic. After the experts look at it, then we send them out for public review. We make the revisions that we can when we get the public review, and then we set it for a public or for a work session with the Community Development Board. These are when I say completed, these are the sections that have been drafted and have gone to the Planning Commission at least once. So our framework setting climate, history, demographics, and vision. Environment, natural resources, and hazards was broken into 3 different sections. They finished with hazards, I believe, in August. Economic development went through several meetings, and I believe they finished with that one in August. Public facilities was originally discussed in April. There was the water and the sewer master plans that were still in process. So we finished the water and sewer sections, and those went to the planning board. They finished that at their November meeting. There's 3 drafts that are still in process, 3 elements that are still in process, right? So there's all the background information, and then there's the 6 plan elements that correlate with the 6 required elements by state statute. And these 6 elements kind of reflect the way that growth or development, how the city plans to grow in different areas, basically. So the transportation section has gone through 1 work session. Public comment was taken. They closed public comment, and then there's going to be a discussion on whether or not they have any revisions to the draft, and that's going to happen this Wednesday at 6 p.m. The housing draft was just completed, and we forwarded that draft to the Community Housing Committee. And they're kind of sort of serving as an advisory body to staff. So they're going to work on that in a couple of work sessions here December 1st and December 8th. Once they're done with once the housing committee is done with their comments, then we'll make revisions, and then we'll actually start working on sending it to agencies into public review. So that's pretty early in the process. We're hoping that the housing section would be hitting in December. And then land use, and the consultants are gonna talk more about that in a minute. I'm not gonna go far into the transportation. I talked a lot about this last time I did an update. Mostly the transportation element, what it is we have many different transportation plans that have been adopted over the years, including trails plans. What this does is we summarize all of these plans into 1 section. And we put all of the information from those plans basically on 2 maps. So there's kind of 2 composite maps that demonstrate what the motorized transportation improvements, so road improvements. And then there's another map which is a composite of all of the active transportation, so all the trails types of plans. So those are all now in 1 place. Before we had a lot of different plans referencing different things, so we're trying to pull it all together. I do want to kind of talk about the way the transportation element is set up. Is what we were told when we were envisioning is that the community they wanted non-motorized transportation to be treated equally to motorized transportation. So they wanted to make sure that trails, basically bike paths, trails, those kinds of things were all equal footing as much as road improvements. So we made sure they have all equal weight in this transportation plan. Transportation element. This transportation element addresses the network in 5 different components. It has the road network. It has an active transportation network. So that is basically trails, pathways. There's public transit, air transportation, and rail. This transportation element talks about the visioning comments that we received and all of the different visioning sessions that we had. It outlines what the major challenges have been. So not every challenge, but what the majority of the transportation challenges have been in the city of Whitefish over the years. It talks about how they've been addressed and what some of the solutions have been. It looks at all of the different transportation plans. It lists them out, and then it talks about how they have all worked together. And finally, it has goals and objectives. And these goals and objectives are kind of a general overview of all of these plans. And it's sort of more talking about what the priorities of the city would be overall in regard to the transportation system. So it doesn't get way into the weeds, and it's not intended to. It's more of an overview to talk about moving forward over the next 20 years. Here are the priorities of the city. And then obviously that would serve as the guidepost for any future transportation plans. So far, so good, not too fast. What I showed here, I just thought this is the active transportation map. It's an example of the way that we've done a composite of everything together. What you see in red are all the future active transportation routes that have already been adopted. The circles, what you see there, those represent the recommendations of the Safe Streets for All plan, which you adopted in 2025. So I wanted to make sure that when somebody looked at this map, if there was a recommended improvement for an intersection for pedestrian accessibility, you could look at this map and at least know that something is proposed there and to look at the plan. So that's kind of what it's doing. It's just saying there's something proposed in this area. Here's the plan that you want to look at to make sure you know what's there. So it was released for public review in September. It went to the Planning Commission on November 5th. It was a very big turnout. We had between 50 and 75 people. A lot of the public comment centered around what was thought to be new improvements being made to Columbia Avenue. And I want to kind of talk about that. Is this plan doesn't really list any new improvements. What it does is it looks at all the adopted plans. And because all of that information was put on one map, people that may not have been familiar with what future improvements for the street were saw this map. And so there was an alarm. There was a lot of discussion about whether Columbia was going to be a bypass or whether Columbia was going to be widened. And there was a lot of concerns, and I'm not sure where this came from, that parking was being removed off of Columbia. The only thing I can think of is maybe somehow that got spun from what happened with the Halloween event. But we assured the public that no, we're not removing parking from Columbia. We're not making a bypass. We're not widening Columbia. And I think that did help to temper it down. There was the other big discussion item was about mixed use and whether or not the transportation plan should refer to mixed use. That's a discussion that's still going to happen. So the housing element, the Montana Land Use Planning Act talks about that we need to do an inventory basically and look at what we have and look at what our existing and our proposed needs are. We're supposed to analyze what the constraints to housing are. We have to give an accounting of how we are addressing housing. And we also have to, every 5 years, show how we have been working towards addressing the housing need in the city. And it's very clear that it says we have to make population projections over the next 20 years, see how much housing we have to have over the next 20 years, and then demonstrate how are we meeting those goals. So as I said, the draft of the housing element has been completed. This is a map I just thought it was kind of interesting. This map shows where the areas of density are in the city. So it's kind of a heat map, the number of units compiled together. You can kind of tell where are the least dense and where are the most dense parts of the city. There's also a map that shows the different types of housing and how it's distributed in the city. There's a map that shows what types of housing is allowed in what zone district, and then there's a map in there that shows what the ages are of all the structures in the city. So it kind of gives you an idea of sort of a real inventory of what we have. That draft has been released to the Housing Committee this afternoon. They are going to be meeting on December 1st and December 8th to discuss that draft and give us what their recommendations are. Following that, then we will make any revisions that we can. We'll send that out on agency review and public review. So that'll be happening sometime in December, and then it's scheduled for December 17th, but we have to figure out how that's going to work so that we can make sure we have time for public comment prior to that. So the land use element, the Montana Land Use Act says that a growth policy has to have a future land use map and a written description of all the different types of uses, and it has to reflect the anticipated preferred use of land over the next 20 years. And this land use map, it'll build on all those existing conditions data in all the chapters that we worked on so far. So we've been moving forward over the last few years and compiling a huge amount of data. And each of these plan elements now, the land use plan is building on these plan elements. We've retained a consultant to help us with this because it's a pretty major task. The first land use visioning session, if you remember, happened December 16th and 17th. And that's when we come in, we had all the maps and we talked about, we thought our street types and our place types were. And the consultant worked on all that information. And now they've put together land use scenarios. And they're saying, here's the different land use scenarios for the city of Whitefish, basically for you to decide which ones you think are most pertinent in which areas. That's an important part, and that's going to happen tomorrow. So there's an open house that's here in this room tomorrow from 5:30 to 7:30. We've announced it on the Vision Whitefish site, so it's gone out to about 600 subscribers. We put a press release. We've put it on all the websites. So hopefully we have a really good turnout. It's a drop-in type open house. So you can show up at 5:30, you can stay for 5 minutes, or you can stay for an hour, go around the circle and make your comments. Dana was kind enough to get childcare set up. So if you have kids, there'll be free childcare with pizza tomorrow night. With that, oh, sorry. The last thing I wanted to show you
Pizza
is
just for the kids,
sorry.
The pizza's just.
I think the piece is just for the kids, but I may sneak up and grab a piece, but I didn't say that.
You gotta keep them.
Also got to keep the planet happy. So the work program has changed a little bit just because things are moving very, very quickly. So November, this month, is transportation. As your direction, you said basically that at the end of each month, they need to be done with this topic and they need to move on. So November is transportation, December will be housing, and January will be land use. You will see your first work session on Vision Whitefish 2045 in January. So that's when it will start coming to you. We'll start bringing it to you in sections. So we'll probably bring compiled sections. You haven't seen this yet, but behind the scenes, I have been compiling all of this stuff together in one document, and you will start to see how this has come together. So it's all been written to sort of flow together. You'll start seeing that happening in January. With the public hearing right now, so the actual public hearing on the draft for the Planning Commission is scheduled for February 19th. So they will have a few work sessions happening between January and February where we'll be bringing this back to the Planning Commission, and they'll start seeing the whole thing that they've worked on again put together for one more shot. But it will be very quick. They'll be having a public hearing scheduled again for February 19th. And then the public hearing for the final draft on the city council side will be on March 19th. So it is going to be moving very, very quick. Keep telling people Merry Christmas because that's kind of what I'm feeling like right now. But there are a lot of things all coming together at the same time. You'll start seeing discussions about zoning happening. It looks like in February with the Planning Commission, and you'll start discussing zoning really close to around the same time.
Just a note, March 30th is not a city council night. It's going to require a special meeting called by the mayor. It's a 5th Monday month. So it'll just be a 5th Monday there. And then later tonight, we'll talk about the January schedule and if you need a second meeting, because I have competing work session topics from other departments with timelines. So we'll talk about that later. But just know that's like the temporary schedule. Keep everything on track for the effective date of May 20.
So I know that was a lot of information very quickly. Do you have any questions for me before I pass it on to CZB?
Thanks, Alan.
Hey, Michelle, you can, if it's just in here or
Okay, let me get you set up and I'll.
Sure.
That's what I want.
Let's try and get rid of this. This doesn't show up in the back. That's what happened last time. Okay.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Running.
Right, thanks.
So thanks for having us here this evening. My name is Thomas with CZB. I think the last time we connected with you was during our trip here, our last trip in September, but we met with you guys right before that trip. And so that was by way of Zoom. So thanks for having us here in person tonight. So tonight, I am joined by my colleagues. I guess I should introduce them. Matt Ingalls, Eric Amy, and Lauren Holmes back there. We are all actively working on this project, enjoying this project, working with your staff team and other folks throughout the community. So thanks for that, and we look forward to continuing that work. So here's where we are today. As we said in August, we launched the project with some just background research. September and October, we had our visit here in October. We had our online survey to get more input. Where we are today is in phase 2, kind of the scenario and or alternative selection. And then we'll move into phase 3 at the end of this month throughout December and January, which will be production of the draft land use plan. I don't have to go over this. I put this in here because this was the slide Alan had conveyed to you guys last time. We wanted to make sure that you understood the components of the land use element that we are working on, but he just went through that. So when we were here with you last time, we walked you through our thinking about land use planning and how we get to a future land use plan, how we get to ultimately a future land use map, the components that make that up. For us, it really starts with street types and place types. Street types are essentially thinking about streets based on their character, their function, the desired streetscape, and place types are thinking about maybe classification of what the desired future physical characteristic is. So kind of looking at both the streets, because they are so important, they make up a large percent of the community of what you see on a day-to-day basis, as well as the private land that surrounds them. So looking at place types and street types to get us to a future land use policy. That's what we've been working on internally and with the community. So our engagement approach is to really meet with you all, to meet with the community, to really listen, to understand what is important to the community, to take that back and to create strategic actions, to create actions that are meaningful to the community and that are appropriate for a land use plan, and ultimately create partners and get you all to the end of this project without any surprises. You should know exactly what we are working on each inning of this game, if you will, as we get to the end. That is our goal. And so when we were here in September, we met with the community on 2 different nights. We had about 50 plus persons each night. And we asked the community to come together as a group around tables, about 7 to 9 people a table, and help us understand the character of the community, to kind of start thinking about this early way of thinking about place types. What's the character of the community? The community provided a significant amount of input. We heard from the community. First, they did provide a number of maps. I think all of those are on the website or will be on your website. So all of the draft maps that they produced are there. So we had a good understanding of the physical components, the character components, but also they provided other information to us that was important throughout the evening, anecdotal information, as well as just very important historical information and just kind of future thought ideas. The importance of US 93 and Highway 40 as a gateway, the uniqueness of downtown, certainly we heard that. Concerns with regard to emergency access, ingress, egress on the northern part of the community, the need for secondary roads, traffic congestion came up a number of times, and then certainly the need for affordable workforce housing and how that would impact potential character. We followed that up with an online version in October, the latter half of October. We had about 150 participants, and we asked the same thing. We had 6 different areas of them. We asked them to help describe the character of those areas, as well as the character and the street type and the functions of 6 different streets. I'll walk through these in a little bit more detail. I'll be quick tonight. I know you guys have a 7 o'clock public hearing. And then the third map was, we asked them to help us understand the likelihood for change in those areas. So I'll just hone in a little bit deeper here. You don't have to pay as much attention to the place type descriptions on the left. Those were provided to the online participants, but the 6 areas that we asked them about were are those that are mapped out on the right-hand side. You can see that the north of the tracks, as well as the residential east of downtown, they designated those, the majority of people who participated designated those as an urban neighborhood place type, kind of that smaller residential lots, walkable, detached, maybe no garages. You can see the residential area west of downtown, as well as Caro Avenue. That area they designated as suburban neighborhood, larger residential lots, maybe curvilinear streets. They designated the 93 south of the river as a commercial corridor. That made sense in terms of its primarily commercial based in terms of land uses that exist. And then downtown, of course, came out as a mixed use downtown just because of its unique characteristics. So that is how the community, the online community, designated those areas. That helps us as we, again, hone in on the details of that place typology. We also asked them, the likelihood for change in this area, in each of the 6 areas over the next 10 to 20 years. And so you can see the north of the tracks, the dark purple means it's to change quite a bit. There's untapped potential here. So the dark purple was at the top north of the tracks, residential west of downtown, Caro Avenue, and then 93 south of the river. All of those were designated by the majority of people. They think it's likely to change quite a bit over the next 10 to 20 years. The percentage of people, the percentage indicated there is the percent of people who specifically said that. It was always a majority, but you can see, for example, 93 south of the river, 90% said, I think it's going to change quite a bit.
Thomas, one thing was those areas that were previous budget.
That's right. That's right. Right. Potential areas of change. The residential area east of the downtown, 77% felt it was likely to stay exactly as it is in 2025. So that lighter purple pink meant that they thought, do I introduce
Just pause a second. Which made us see if it just.
Go up one.
Is Jen still online? When she hears it changed to a different species.
It's still on. I suppose you can.
Can somebody online unmute their mic and let us know if you can hear us?
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
We can't hear you.
I think we're speaking wrong.
Let me see.
He said yes.
They can hear us. We
I
can't
think
hear
what
them.
it did is when I started speaking, it switched microphones.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the default, it should be the owl is the default mic no matter what, so.
The lights should be on, shouldn't they? The eyes.
Default mic.
It's, I mean, the green light's on the back, you can see it.
Just same as system 3D for the speaker.
So like the speaker is the meeting L2. Well, it should be the meeting L.
There we go.
Sorry.
Monica, can you unmute your mic to see if we can hear you?
Right, I can hear you guys.
Okay,
Thank you. We can hear you.
perfect.
Okay. All right. So again, the residential area east of downtown, 77% said likely to stay exactly as it is in 25. So the community thought very little change there. And downtown, kind of that middle purple was, I think it is likely to change a little. I can see limited development or redevelopment if it's done right. So those were some inputs that we got. It helps us understand where the community feels change may take place and maybe a degree of tolerance for that change. Oh. Do I have to get something that works? Okay.
Oh, there it is. Video. Okay.
Perfect. Okay. And then the final thing we asked them was about street types, because that's something that we were looking into. We asked them about 6 different streets. You can see that south of 93, or south of the river on 93, they designated as a regional corridor. Spokane Avenue north of the river, over the railroad tracks in Wyoming, they designated as a community corridor. And then Second Ave and Columbia, they designated as a district street. And that's somewhat in line with what we heard from the participants when we were actually in this facility the night before. So this is all good information. We heard from about 250 people. That's a lot of good information. We took that and, well, how did you do that?
I just have touch.
You don't have to tech.
You just have to, yeah.
Okay.
That changed.
So we took that information and we created, based on that input, based on our analysis, coordination with staff, we created a street type map. This will be on a large poster. I know that this is really hard to see here. It'll be on a large poster at the community open house tomorrow. This is our initial draft version of the street types for the community. So you'll see that tomorrow night. And we also did the same thing with the base, with the place types map. We created a base map. This will be on a poster tomorrow night. This is based on the community's input, our on-the-ground analysis, as well as the requirements of NLUPA, which is really why we're doing all of this growth policy and planning to begin with. Okay, there's a lot going on this slide, so I'll be really quick. It's on a poster tomorrow night as well. But recognizing that we have to account, the MLUPA is requiring the community to account for future development, future housing needs, et cetera. We're using the Montana Department of Commerce housing projection needs, which are about 2,100, the bottom right of that screen, 2076, about 2,100 units of housing are the estimated need over the next 20 years, between now and 2045. Based on that, and based on the input that was produced in the 2025 housing needs assessment, approximately 75% of that, 3/4 of that housing should be for those earning less than 120% of AMI, so lower to middle income housing. And recognizing that number, if you've got 2,100 units as the need over the next 20 years, stretching the housing assessments percentage forward for another 10 years. Theirs was really only looking at 2024 to 2034, stretching that out straight line projection. You would need about 1,600 of those 2,100 units as housing for those earning less than 120% of AMI. A pretty tall order. Okay, no, I tabbed it. Oh, no, didn't. So as we think about that information, working to complete a land use plan, recognizing that the land use plan is closely integrated with the housing plan, closely integrated with the transportation plan. It's important for us to recognize that the strong support for workforce housing is something that we have to pay attention to in this plan, but we also have to recognize that supply and density alone will not necessarily get us there. You're no longer allowed to have inclusionary zoning in the state of Montana. So moving forward, yes, additional density may help, economies of scale may help, but it may just produce the right housing is built in the right location. So the city certainly is an ideal feature that you currently have in the code, carrying that forward, figuring out how we think about where that could be used in the future and different land uses. Do I have to do something?
No.
Okay. Okay. Thinking about how that may be applied, where that may be applied will be really important to be integrated into the land use plan. Also thinking about, public-private partnerships, how the city can use, whether it's resort funds, other funds, to really direct their monies to where they want additional densities and/or housing will be important. There is that compromise. We've heard it. The importance of protecting character as well as accommodating the growth pursuant to the UNLUPA requirements. So tomorrow night, what we're going to ask the community is to think about that, to think about those areas within the city's existing boundary where they think that additional growth could be accommodated or not. And so we've got 3 areas identified within the existing city boundaries. We want to understand their prioritization, if they think they're viable or not. And if so, what kind of place types would be appropriate for those areas to define the character. And then we've also got some locations, 6 areas located outside of the city. And if the question is, are you supportive of growth outside of the city boundary? If no, that's fine. But if yes, where might it be most appropriate and where might you prioritize and what might those place types look like? So we've got some boards set up for them.
Have you done any specific outreach to the places, at least inside the city limits, that this is going to be a topic for discussion?
We have touched base with a couple of the people, but not all of them. No. One of the places at the mall, north of the mall. One of the places is the far south west portion of the city, and the other one is the vacant land up near on the northeast side of the city.
Okay.
Yeah, but we have not touched base with all of them. No.
There hasn't been any sort of specific mailing or anything like that?
No, we have not done any mailing. No.
So that
This is still really high level.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks.
Those are all pretty much undeveloped lots that
Yeah, all of
had
it undeveloped, except
settlers talked to us about at one point in time about things there, but
Okay.
again, it's worth noting that these sites were selected because of earlier input. These were areas designated as areas of likely change. Okay, so that is for tomorrow night. That'll be from 5:30 to 7:30 here in the council chambers. And we welcome all of you, and please get the word out to anybody else who you think may not be on the Engage Whitefish website email. I think that's it. Just next steps that you guys saw.
Thanks, Thomas. We'll start with questions from the council, if any.
You recognize, of course, that those areas that you designated that are quote outside the city, that you've gotten input from people inside the city, say there's likely change. The likelihood that the people that are living in those places are going to accept change is like 0.
We understand that. We understand that this is just to get the input at a high level.
I get it.
It's really to help us understand the tolerance for growing outside of the city rather than within, number one. And then to your point, to also recognize just because you select a property outside the city does not mean they will voluntarily want to grow and or annex or change their property. We do recognize that.
Okay.
Yes.
but just to help with the future land use map, because then, if it is going to come into the city and it looks like it, then we want to zone it so something that works for water and sewer, and it's not giant lots that don't make any sense for that, things like that. So.
Yeah, but that's a good point. Thank you.
Let's go to public comment. You'd like to start? James?
Yes, please. I'd like to just understand, does the number of lower to middle income housing needs by 2045 include the 400 or so units that are about to come online in 2026?
I'm going to say that I doubt that it does. I don't think that the Department of Commerce recognized that. So that would start to eat into that number, is my guess.
So if that were the case, then it would be more like 1,200 lower to middle income.
That's right. So if you had 400, there were 420 units coming in at 120% of AMI or less, you would start to eat into that estimated need. That's right.
And that's depending on maybe deed restricting or not.
Right, right.
But also, is there a recipe for the amount of types of housing? So if we have X amount of rentals versus starter homes, townhomes, McMansions, whatever. You know, I like the idea of mixed incomes in different neighborhoods or in the same neighborhood, excuse me. Is there a recipe for what we want to see?
That's really up to the community. That's really a community's desire. I will say this, in our place typologies that we've outlined for the community tomorrow night, you'll see our map and you'll see the recommended, the descriptions as well. But almost all of our place types do mix different types of housing to one extent or another. Duplexes in single family neighborhoods, maybe fourplexes in some neighborhoods, and then there may be, you know, mixed variety residential that might include larger multifamily, right? But our recommendation would be different housing typologies moving forward. But to ensure you get that is certainly, you're a bit at the whim of the market in some regards, unless you are proactively putting some of the resort tax money, maybe for workforce housing, into a project and or zoning it a very particular way. Otherwise, it's really probably to come full circle. It's really the community's decision what kind of variety of housing you want to see.
I'm Keegan Siebenoller. I'm the executive director of Shelter WF. Just two things about the land use session tomorrow night that I noticed. The first was on the Engage Whitefish site. You posted kind of a preview image that had the land use map, and it also had basically text very similar to what was discussed in that previous slide, where it basically says that while MUPA encourages density in building heights in certain districts, this growth is unlikely to produce new affordable or workforce housing. Instead, the market will continue to deliver primarily market rate housing, potentially at a faster pace, but without mechanisms to ensure affordability. I assume that's going to be on the poster tomorrow. Is that correct?
That will be there.
Yeah, I just want to register that, like, I think that is really outside of the scope of what a land use consultant should be putting on a document that's going for public feedback. That is an opinion. I think it's not supported by most of the economic research because it wasn't a full slide, and I wasn't sure it was going to be there tomorrow. I didn't have a chance to write a letter to council about it, but you can look at research from Pew Research Center, John Institute, other places, and show that if you're building market rate housing in the places in Whitefish and doing it densely, then you can't adequately address quite a bit of workforce housing need through the market. Now, the Legacy Homes program is tremendous. Deed restrictions can be very useful. They're part of the equation, but I would just really urge the council to reconsider whether putting a statement like that is an opinion that some people hold, but is not economic fact, on a document that the public is going to come to, and then just hear, oh, okay, so all of this land use plan, all of this housing that has to be developed under MUPA won't help us out at all. I think it just puts people in a very negative mindset. I also think it hurts the credibility of the process. So I don't know, maybe those posters are already printed. I would urge the council to tell the consultants, hey, you know, cover that up, because that really doesn't have anything to do with us choosing where to put new housing growth. I think the second point that I'll make is that when we have areas where we say new development should happen, I think the reason why existing development has been so divisive is we've done the same thing in the past. We say, okay, development needs to go on these places on the edge of the city, needs to go north of the viaduct, and that's where all new development should take place, or a majority of it should. I think it not only puts undue burden on existing residents around those specific three areas, but I also think it's just fundamentally encouraging sprawl. If you ask people in the city where it should grow, they're going to say far away from them, or they're going to say outside of the city. And we believe that if you want to have a community where actually workforce is able to live, then every neighborhood needs to absorb some of that change. So I would just urge the council to also consider that when you're saying, hey, growth is going to happen in these three places, you're going to create a much more unequal place. I mean, it's the exact same thing that we've been doing in the past, where we say, well, if you can't afford to live in one of the existing neighborhoods of Whitefish, you're posted further to the outside of Whitefish, to Columbia Falls, to Kalispell. So those are my concerns with this process when it comes to tomorrow. I think putting spin on the ball before the community has had a chance to comment on the land use plan, I think it really does destroy the credibility of the process. So those are my two main comments. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I would just say that our understanding of the MLUPA requirements is that it does allow for the additional densities. Our concern is that if not coupled with a proactive housing mechanism, whether that's money or that the home legacy program, you could see market rate housing proliferate in those areas. So we just think it's not all or none. So we agree with you, okay? But our concern is that if you don't proactively think about how to encourage, how to incentivize, how to supplement, whether it's with financial dollars, et cetera, you could see more market rate housing, and you might miss out on some of the affordable and workforce housing is on the city.
Will that be part of your recommendation then in your report, that certain kinds of subsidies or programs that would couple with that? Will that be part of your recommendation in the report?
Yeah, that for sure, because it is connected to the housing.
Yeah, I mean, you haven't seen the housing element yet, Mr. Counselor, but there is recommendations in the housing element goals and strategies about looking at more financial incentives, because that is our concern, right? That there is some part of the formula is creating quantity, but the other part of the formula is making sure that what is built is actually going to be affordable to people that need it. So there is some discussion in the housing element talking about looking at reallocation of our funding, looking at partnering with other organizations, those kinds of things. So we're working very closely to make sure they're both saying the same thing.
Yeah, we're going to have to find some new and better incentives for legacy homes, because the state's taking away some of our incentives with regard to parking, with regard to building height, which are the main things we were getting affordable housing with. And so we're going to have to get even more creative and come up with other solutions.
It's been one of our big frustrations. It's pretty much anything. Most of the financial mandates that we've had have been taken away from us. So it's basically now just build more housing that will be affordable. And we believe that is part of the equation. But in a place like Whitefish, that's not going to be all of the equation.
That's okay.
Rhonda.
So if, past is prologue, we know that our housing needs assessment called for 1,000 new units between 2000 and 2025. And we got more than 1,000 new units, and a handful were affordable. I think 925 were not affordable. They were market rate. So we know what happens if you don't have sideboards around that. So it's not an opinion. It happened to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Rhonda. Mary?
I was just you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say that as well. And I think it's really important to keep that poster. I think it's the kind of robust conversation this community needs to be having, because while the legislature is trying to address housing, they haven't given us the tools we need. And so we're going to have to really look very carefully and have a very extensive conversation about that. And I would say that, while there is talk that there are studies that show that housing, they're not studies specific to Whitefish, which is a very unique community, a very unique economy. And I would say there are studies, unless we can see to say in general there are studies, yeah, you can find studies anywhere just to support you. But we need specific information that supports what this community is going to do. And that's the kind of what I'm looking from this team, is help us find that factual basis to do something unique for Whitefish. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Further comments from the public?
I have one a little different topic. When you send out the emails for the open house tomorrow,
Name and address.
oh, sorry, Cameron Dexter, 309 Hawthorne Ave in Council. When you send out the emails for the open house tomorrow, did you send those out to the support list from Engage Whitefish? I didn't receive one, so I just wanted to make sure.
So was it 2 weeks ago? There was a newsletter alert that went out to every. So we posted a public notice. So we put a press release in all three newspapers. We posted on all the websites, and I sent out a newsletter alert to 660 subscribers on Engage Whitefish. If you didn't receive a newsletter, then we'll have to look why you didn't get one. But it went to 660 people.
Okay, I didn't get one. The latest one I got was October 2nd, but I did see it on the website. I just want to make sure.
No, there was one that went out November, whatever it was, a week and a half ago.
Thank you.
Additional public comments? Go ahead and turn it back to the council.
We
Yes,
do have somebody online.
thanks, Michelle.
Nathan, you can unmute your mic.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to comment on the market rate discussion. I think that what it seems like many people in the room are forgetting is that I'm pretty sure basically everybody in the room lives at a home that they purchased at a market rate, including myself. And I consider myself very middle class. I have a student loan debt that is as much as a mortgage in a typical place. And I was able to purchase a home at a market rate. And so I think that saying that the market can't solve the problem, especially for the middle class, is factually incorrect. And Whitefish has been very middle class for most of its history. And all of that housing was provided by the market. And so the market, as it has been functioning over the last 10 or 20 years, will not solve the problem. But the market can be incentivized, I think, to do different things to meet the needs of today. And so I think that that's something that we should all keep in mind. Subsidy dollars, as we all know, are very, very limited. If we're spending those on people that make $100,000 a year, we're wasting money. We shouldn't be creating effectively, like what happens in other ski towns, Jackson, Aspen, etc., a lottery for middle-class people to be able to live in Whitefish.
Thanks, Nathan. Anyone else, Michelle?
No.
Additional comments, discussion from the council? Thomas, anything else to add?
No, I would just say,
Thanks for
please come out tomorrow night.
You will. On that note, we're adjourned. Thanks.
Thank you.